Stop playing with them, fool.
Hi, I'm Nicola Cairncross. Welcome to my podcast. This is where we talk about entrepreneurship, digital marketing, being a digital nomad, and much, much more. I really hope you enjoy the show. We're going to talk about setting yourself free. We're going to talk about success leaving clues, and we're going to go into part 2 of the Greg Porter interview. So I hope you enjoy the show this week. Your origin story. I mentioned in a previous post that Daniel Priestley had been talking on LinkedIn about origin, vision and mission the other day, and I've been thinking about my origin story ever since. It also inspired a blog post covering the whole topic in more detail, which I covered in last week's podcast, along with some inspiring examples of the origin, vision and mission of some of the entrepreneurs I admire. He said that your origin story should tell me why you got into your chosen industry. Ideally, it should be something you can trace back to your childhood. Your vision is what you want the world to look like, and your mission is the story of how you're going to achieve that vision through your business. I don't often talk about my origin story because while I covered some of it briefly in my new book, A Better Entrepreneur, I don't really like to talk about my rather painful childhood and early adulthood much, focusing instead on the years after my big entrepreneurial transformation moment when I was 35. While I do believe that you can learn how to be a better entrepreneur, hence the book title, there are some of us that are born ready. It was just in our DNA. We simply can't help it, and it manifests at a young age, no matter if you were born rich or poor. We're driven, highly curious about how businesses work, and passionate about making money, whether we need it or not. It's a measure of playing the game for us. Both my grandmother and mother were entrepreneurial, out of necessity, but also from having restless creative temperaments. My grandmother was born dirt poor in Suffolk, sent away to service as a tweenie in a big house in Sussex, met my grandfather, a labourer and market gardener, and had to make do and mend, as they say. As soon as women married, they had to stop work. That's just the way it was in the 1940s, and even up until the 1960s. It was also just after the war, and rationing was still a big thing. Although I say they had to stop work, what I mean is they had to stop organised work. A lot of people went out to work as skivvies and chars, people who clean for other people, and that's indeed what my grandmother did at some points as well when things were tight. Highly creative, Nan taught herself to cook and bake like an angel, clean like a demon, garden well, and grow both food and flowers. So anything she and her young family needed, made their home lovely with no budget at all. She would knit Grandad's jumpers. Grandad was a gardener too, great at DIY, and when not digging or growing, was always in his garage making things or mending things. My mother's entrepreneurialism came out in the form of property. She could spot the worst house on the best street a mile off, and we moved about 15 times in 18 years, while she and my stepfather bought, did up and sold properties, in between bringing up 4 small children. This made for a very peripatetic lifestyle. I didn't start my first business until the age of 7 or 8. My singing sister Heather still dines out on the story, as she was always my first unpaid employee. Life has been one long hustle ever since. I go into more detail about my vision and mission for my business in another post, so I'll say focus on my origin story for now. It may inspire you and maybe make you realise that you may be an entrepreneur in waiting too. The first enterprise was a typical scratching my own itch business. I loved to read and got through 2 to 3 children's books a day. I'd been living in a village in Sussex with a great library, but then we moved to Wales and there was no library nearby. I needed more books urgently. Back in the 1960s, the TV was awful, with only a few programmes geared towards children and mostly towards very little children. Nothing for the precocious child I had become due to my eclectic reading habits. Anyone remember Bill and Ben, the Flower Pot Men, featuring Weed, Magic Roundabout, Camberwick Green, Trumpton and Jackanory? I never much liked the clangers. When we lived with Nan and Grandad after dinner, they let us watch Outward Bound with Jack Hargreaves and Upstairs Downstairs. And then later, my new stepfather used to let us watch The Waltons and, of course, Star Trek. I digress. But while Nan taught me to sew, knit and crochet, nothing came close to satisfying my voracious reading habit. Mum taught me to read at the age of about 3 as a good way of keeping us occupied. She worked, leaving us with a blind babysitter, and it kept us occupied and out of trouble. Historical fiction, romantic fiction, the classics, sci-fi, you name it, I would read it. I even read the back of the cereal packets during breakfast. So when my mother reappeared after a sudden 2-year absence and whisked us away from my nan and granddad off to Wales with a new stepfather, I found myself isolated and desperate for books. I had the idea to let the local children bring their used books and those discarded by their parents to a book swap library under our stairs. I roped Heather in and we set to work cataloguing our own books and sticking little holders and tickets into the books, just like in the library, and then set up shelves under the stairs. Then I went out to spread the word, marketing, while Heather sat reading, waiting for the first customers that never came. The business model is a bit vague. I think the idea was to not make money necessarily, but just to stock unwanted books and let kids come and borrow them while giving me an unlimited library to wallow in myself. Have you spotted the fatal flaw in my business plan yet? The clue is in the fact that I had to go out to the playgrounds and the woods to market the venture. Yep, you've got it. Nobody was interested. Nobody cared about reading as much as I did. In short, I had done no market research. At the age of about 10 or 11, while living in Montrose in Scotland, I'd had my next ill-fated idea about collecting for charity and keeping some of the profits. And my best friend Molly and I set off around the local housing estate with homemade collection boxes on strings. It was very successful until someone recognised Molly as the daughter of the local policeman and reported us. We had eaten our profits by then in the form of chocolate, so it was probably just as well. By the age of 12 to 13, thanks to my grandmother's early training in making fabulous outfits for my Barbie, I had moved on to being quite proficient at making clothes for myself. I also often altered the clothes I bought at jumble sales to be more fashionable, and I was often asked to undertake creating items for other friends, so that brought in a few pounds. Anyone remember puffball skirts? Later, when at art college as a mature student of 20 or 21, this came in handy, as I was able to set up a mini factory at home, turning out ever more dramatic new romantic waistcoats, made from old curtains and mother-of-pearl buttons I sourced in second-hand shops and selling them to local boutiques. My singing sister Heather was again roped in to become part of my production line, and she can still confidently bag out a waistcoat to this day. I'd also secured a series of part-time jobs, as children were allowed to work part-time from the age of 12 in those days. I embarked on a not very salubrious series of jobs, first working in a newsagent, too early in the morning, then a greengrocer, too cold and dirty in the winter, then as a waitress in a convalescent centre, where I was promoted after a couple of weeks to chef, as I was capable of cooking a roast dinner, chops and hearty stews. Looking back, this was the time I was most flush with cash, as I was living at home, working 2 evenings and both weekend days, earning a grown-up hourly rate, riding a bike everywhere, saving hard and loving life. I also loved listening to the stories of the people staying there, who all came from the newspaper industry in London, presumably being paid for by their trade union. Perhaps this was what first fed my desire to live and work in London. An ambition I fulfilled in the late 80s, and this is where I met my future husband and the father of my 2 children, Irving, who, bless him, didn't have an entrepreneurial bone in his body, which was a good counterpart for me. I couldn't wait to find out if the entrepreneurial gene had been passed on to Phoebe or Nelson. Now, what about you? Having read my origin story, how would yours read? I'd love to see it, so do feel free to send me a link when you've shared yours online. I'll be the first to like it, as I love to read about how entrepreneurs and small business owners were influenced by their childhood and parents. Set yourself free. The day I had that entrepreneurial epiphany in my sunny living room in Kensal Rise, on my first step on the journey to true entrepreneurship, I experienced one of the most crucial lessons that can set you apart from the crowd. This is the lesson of learning to take 100% responsibility for your outcomes. This concept is not just a motivational slogan, it's a fundamental principle that can redefine your approach to both business and life. When you embrace full responsibility, you stop being a victim, you move from working at cause to at effect. You gain control over your destiny, unlocking the potential to achieve remarkable success. In this post, we'll explore the importance of taking complete ownership of your results and provide actionable steps to implement this powerful mindset shift. The essence of responsibility. Taking 100% responsibility means acknowledging that your successes and failures are a direct result of your actions, decisions, and mindset. It involves recognizing that external circumstances, while influential, do not dictate your outcomes. Instead, it is your response to those circumstances that determines your path. This mindset is empowering because it shifts the focus from blaming others or the environment to introspection and proactive change. The power of responsibility. When you accept full responsibility, you eliminate the victim mentality that can hold you back. This mental shift is liberating and can lead to profound changes in your life. Consider the following benefits of embracing 100% responsibility. You become more empowered. By owning your results, you empower yourself to make necessary changes. You're no longer waiting for others to fix your problems or create opportunities for you. You become more resilient. Accepting responsibility helps you build resilience. When setbacks occur, you view them as learning experiences rather than insurmountable obstacles. Proactive thinking. This mindset encourages proactive problem solving. Instead of reacting to problems, you anticipate and address potential issues before they escalate. Growth and learning. Taking responsibility fosters a growth mindset. You seek out feedback, learn from mistakes, and continually improve your skills and strategies. Implementing 100% responsibility. Adopting this mindset requires conscious effort and practice. Every time you catch yourself feeling hopeless, defeated, beaten down, or angry at life, just become aware of that and say, now, that's not taking 100% responsibility, is it? Or you could repeat to yourself my favourite Gary Vaynerchuk saying of all time, which is, nobody cares. Very bracing, that one. Here are 5 actionable tips to help you embrace full responsibility on your entrepreneurial journey. 1. Self-reflection. Regularly evaluate your actions, decisions, and their outcomes. Identify areas where you can improve and take corrective action. 2. Accountability partners. Partner with someone who can hold you accountable for your goals and commitments. This could be a mentor, coach, or a fellow entrepreneur. 3. Eliminate excuses. Be mindful of when you're making excuses for your shortcomings. Replace excuses with actionable plans to overcome those challenges. 4. Set clear goals. Define clear, measurable goals and develop a plan to achieve them. Regularly review your progress and adjust your strategies as needed. 5. Send feedback. Actively send feedback from others and be open to constructive criticism. Use this feedback to improve your performance and decision making. Real-life application. To illustrate the impact of taking 100% responsibility, let's look at a real-life example. Consider an entrepreneur who blames market conditions for their poor sales performance. By shifting their mindset to take full responsibility, they stop feeling all hopeless and emotional. Instead, they begin to analyse their marketing strategies, customer engagement, and product offerings. They identify weaknesses in their approach and make necessary adjustments. Over time, their sales improve, not because the market conditions change, but because they took proactive steps to enhance their business. Recommended reading. To further delve into the concept of responsibility and personal growth, consider these books for recommended reading. 1. The Success Principles by Jack Canfield. This book offers practical advice and strategies for achieving success, with a strong emphasis on taking responsibility for your outcomes. 2. Extreme Ownership by Jacko Willink and Leif Babin. Written by former Navy SEALs, this book teaches the principles of leadership and accountability, applicable in both personal and professional life. 3. A Better Entrepreneur by Nicola Cairncross. Well, I have to put my own book in here once or twice, don't I? Exploring what happened after that epiphany moment in Kensal Rise, what I did differently, what changed, how I felt about it, and who appeared to help me. Conclusion. Embracing 100% responsibility is a transformative practice that can lead to exceptional results in your entrepreneurial journey. By taking full responsibility and ownership of your actions and their outcomes, you empower yourself to make meaningful changes, to overcome any obstacles, and to achieve your goals. Start today by reflecting on your current mindset, setting clear, simple goals, and taking proactive steps to create the future you desire. This post was inspired by just one of the 25 lessons from my new book, A Better Entrepreneur. Success leaves clues. Success is not an accident, it leaves clues, and those clues can be found in the stories, habits, and strategies of those who have already achieved what you aspire to. Understanding this concept can accelerate your journey to entrepreneurial success by learning from the experiences of others. The essence of learning from success. One pivotal conversation with my mentor made me realise that there are no cookie-cutter rules to success. When I lost everything and asked him what to do next to become a success again, he said, "I can't tell you that, Nicola, because what I would do to become successful again is not what you will do. You have to figure it out for yourself." This advice underscored the importance of self-discovery and the individuality of each entrepreneurial journey. Seeking inspiration. During that challenging period, I began interviewing successful entrepreneurs for my podcast, The Business Success Factory. Each guest shared their entrepreneurial story and offered their most valuable tip around mindset, marketing, and money, 3 critical pillars of entrepreneurship. This experience not only opened doors for me, but also helped me identify patterns of success. Reading successful books further reinforced this understanding. 2 books that particularly stood out were Getting to Plan B by John Mullins and Randy Commissar, and The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. These books are traditionally aimed at startups seeking investment, but their principles are equally valuable for bootstrappers, people who are funding their own startups. They emphasize testing business hypotheses quickly and inexpensively, viewing each outcome as valuable information rather than a reflection of personal failure. What that means is you just make simple tests. You just have an idea and you test that idea, and you do that as quickly and inexpensively as possible. And you regard the outcome as simply data rather than taking it on board personally. It was very empowering to learn that even someone who has been mega successful in the world of startups could completely fail on their next venture. That even those success stories, starting again, had to create a hypothesis of what might work for which market and then make that market an offer. And just test, and test again. I love the fact that there are tools on the market that can help you test things like your landing page and your sales pages on your website. You shouldn't test more than one thing at a time, though. So perhaps run for a month with a certain amount of traffic going to your landing page and make one offer for people to opt into your mailing list. And then for the next month, make a second offer and see which one brings you the most leads. Of course, you need a good amount of traffic to be able to do this. So, because at least 100 people should see each offer before you can get any statistically relevant results. So only try that if you're getting a decent amount of traffic, say 1,000 people a month. Applying lessons. The key takeaway from these resources is that no one can guarantee your business success. Variables change, markets evolve, and even past success in one area doesn't ensure future success in another, or even the same area, to be honest. Therefore, it's crucial to treat your entrepreneurial journey as a series of experiments. Develop hypotheses about your business ideas and test them diligently. For example, if you believe that a particular product will sell well, create a prototype and get it in front of potential customers as quickly as possible. Collect feedback, make adjustments, and test again. This iterative process helps refine your offering and increases the chances of success. Another critical aspect is to avoid getting too attached to the outcomes. Success or failure in an experiment doesn't define you. For example, it's always the headline you like least that wins. Instead, it provides data that guides your next steps. This mindset reduces the emotional roller coaster often associated with entrepreneurship and allows you to make objective decisions. The Lean Startup book delves deeper into these concepts, offering detailed methodologies for conducting experiments and interpreting results. By adopting these approaches, you can make more informed decisions and pivot quickly when necessary. Recommended reading. To further delve into the concept of learning from success, consider these recommended readings. Getting to Plan B by Mullins and Commissar. This book provides strategies for testing and pivoting business ideas to find the best path to success. The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. It offers a methodology for creating and managing successful startups in an age where companies need to innovate more than ever. The E-Myth Revisited by Michael E. Gerber. This book discusses why most small businesses don't work and what to do about it, emphasizing the importance of systems and learning from successful business models. Conclusion. Success leaves clues, and by learning from the experiences of successful entrepreneurs, you can accelerate your own journey. Treat your entrepreneurial efforts as experiments, focus on continuous learning, and don't be afraid to pivot based on feedback. These principles will guide you towards creating a successful and sustainable business. This post was inspired by one of the 25 lessons from my new book, A Better Entrepreneur. Part 2 of the Greg Porter interviews.
12 months in business is nothing at all. And people say, what do you mean? It's like, well, you look at it and think, oh, in the next 12 months, I'm going to do all this stuff. But actually, you're not. So what you do is you send yourself down a path of trying to achieve so much in 12 months that you couldn't possibly achieve. So what you do, you rush it. You don't do it properly. You don't achieve everything. Get more and more frustrated. When really what you should do is give yourself a 12-month target. So the bar is so low that you could fall over it. And then when you've achieved that and you've still got 8 months left, you could then say, oh, well, maybe I could do a bit more. Yeah. And where that puts you psychologically with regard to that business and your life is miles ahead of where you'll be trying to, achieve everything. And, it's the volume is vanity, profit is sanity. The number of builders that I know who start off in their 20s and 30s wanting the big building company with the big building contracts, if I could get £1 million building contract. And then as they go through the process of doing that, they end up in their 50s looking for small building contracts with lots of profit in them, where they're definitely going to get paid. They're not looking for the £1 million building contracts that have got no profit in them, where they're not going to get paid because they've been through that process. But it's possible these days to educate yourself about that with all the resources around you and avoid all of these mistakes. Andy and I had businesses where it was all about, well, bigger's better, but it isn't. It isn't. And especially now, so many people make an absolute fortune by providing virtual products and without even having an office.
I know.
So their overhead's zero. The cost of their product is zero. And it's all profit.
It's free.
Yeah. So it's so much easier now to make money in business than it's ever been. But people still fall into the traps. So I think it's education. People have an understanding of, if you have a basic understanding of how the world works, for example, if the Fed are going to put the interest rates up, what does that mean? And if the Fed aren't going to put the interest rates up, what does that mean? And if the Feds are putting the interest rates down, what does that mean? I mean, if you go and ask 99 out of 100 entrepreneurs in their 20s, probably most of them don't know the answer to any of those three things. Yeah. But those sorts of things can affect your business because it's all about affecting your customers' affordability to buy your product.
Interesting you should say that, because I was talking to someone earlier today and they were saying they've just been to London and it's like a graveyard on a weekday night whereas they were quite well off and they couldn't understand where everyone was. And all the comments that came in afterwards was that, it's just been a bank holiday. It's the beginning of the month. People are really, really skint and they don't want to spend £8 on a glass of wine when they could get a bottle for £8 and things like that. It was a Tuesday night. And all of these things that these people just hadn't considered. And, the fact that, another client of mine called me the other day and said, which is what's prompted this series of talks and interviews, because I really want to try and help ordinary business people by talking to people who know what's going on. They basically are saying there's pubs going out of business, there's restaurants going out of business, there's festivals going bankrupt. And I know from looking at my kids' behaviour, they're definitely going to less things and they're being more choosy about where they go and what they do, because every penny counts more. So if you've got a business that's customer facing and that's dependent on they haven't declared a recession, but we know we're in a recession and it might even get worse, because that people are somehow picking up on this and they're not spending, are they?
Well, no, I mean, the trouble is that it depends how far you want me to go with this, but the mainstream
Go as far as
media,
you like.
well, the mainstream media, when I first started looking at the mainstream media, and people were saying people I know close to me were saying to me, yeah, no, it's all lies, mate. And I just think to myself, it can't be right, can it? What, the BBC, the government,
Oh, please.
lying to you?
My
How
ex-husband
can
the BBC.
Yeah, but that was the process I went through. Was how that can't be right. What you're telling me, this is all lies. All of this, it can't be right. And then I started to do the unthinkable. I started to do my own research.
Oh,
All steady. And one of the things, I don't know if you've ever looked at it, and don't get me wrong, I'm not going to get into flat Earth, but if you look at, there's a site called Flat Earth Dave, and what he tells you is, don't believe any of the videos that are on this site, just go and do your own research. And I think that's a fabulous way to deal with things. So when it comes to what we're discussing now, I don't expect anybody listening to this to take my word for anything I'm saying at all. Because if I was listening to it and I was the person I was 20 years ago, I'd be thinking, this isn't right, this can't be right. But if you actually go and check it out for yourself, you will find that we are lied to all the time.
Even if it's by omission, the fact they don't talk about things that people need to know.
Yes. And so what everybody thinks is, if there was something going on in the world that we needed to know about, the journalists would bring it to our attention. But they haven't brought anything of this stuff to our attention, so therefore there's nothing to worry about.
I know.
So,
and all the good journalists have been kicked out, haven't they? They've all had to go onto Substack. Isn't
it great? Isn't it great, though? Because you know where to look for them now. I mean, Tucker Carlson is a perfect example. I mean, I've got no idea what Tucker Carlson's worth, but if you said to me, have a guess, it's got to be 50 million. Yeah. So he's not doing any of the things that he's doing because he needs the money to pay the bills every month.
He's not grifting, as they call it.
He's not grifting.
All the denigrators of people who are trying to get the truth out to people that's the first thing they say is you're a grifter, i.e. you're saying this stuff for money. Whereas, most of the journalists and the doctors that are really trying to get the truth out, they're independently wealthy, which is why they're able to get the truth out, because they're not beholden to anyone for their salary.
No. But I mean, you've only got to go and watch the Tucker Carlson Putin interview. Now, I'm not going to fall down on any side here, but watch the Tucker Carlson Putin interview, get through the first 30 minutes of pain, but then listen to what Putin says. He bangs on about
Russian history, doesn't he?
But listen to what Putin says. But don't just listen to what he says. Look at how he says it, how he's sitting. Look at his mannerisms. And actually think about, what do I think of this guy? What do I think? Do I think this guy is full of it? Do I think he's telling the truth? Do I think he's in the middle? And then what you'll have done is you'll have done your own research and then go and look at other things and do your own research and find out for yourself about all this stuff.
Also, you've used your intuition there, which I think a lot of entrepreneurs and business people have very strong intuition, but they don't necessarily trust it all the time. Do you trust yours? I know you do now, but did you always trust your intuition? I mean, for example, when you first met your business partner, did you know that you were going to be in each other's lives?
I think I did. I didn't know how far we would go and how long we would be doing it, because I didn't think like that, because I was very, very today, because I was, 22 or something, 23. Yeah. Or maybe even younger than that, actually. But I think if you do your own research on how many times you've trusted your gut and that's worked out for you, and how many times you haven't listened to your gut and that hasn't worked out for you, you'll find most of the time your gut is right. Most of the time. And of course, the more you research how your gut works from the point of view of, giving you intuition and helping you make decisions, the more you become in touch with that feeling and the more you understand that feeling. So it's like training yourself to refine your skills. It's like watching one of those, watching one of like the Karate Kid, you know, who gets bullied and pushed around, and then along comes the instructor who teaches him the way of karate. And what he's actually done is he's refined skills. And of course, although he's painting a fence, it looks a bit like, well, he's painting a fence, but he's not really, is he? He's learning a skill and becoming successful. And again, like I said, becoming successful is about establishing the quality of life you want and putting yourself in a position where you can maintain that indefinitely. So it's not about making piles of money, because making piles of money to a greater or lesser degree is easy. You have to give up your whole life, perhaps your marriage, your children, your relationship with your friends and your health, but you will make a massive pile of money. But what use is that, you know, if you're a lonely, old, sick person, you know, it's no good, is it? So again, training yourself to trust your gut. And, you know, I never forget somebody who was in my life at one point came to my house, and he walked in the door, and we were talking about a couple of bits and pieces, and I signed some paperwork. He left, and it was all good, no problems at all. And my wife said to me, she said, I really don't like him. I really don't like him. I've got a terrible feeling about him. And I went, oh, don't be silly, love. And he turned out to be a very unpleasant person. And of course, if I'd have listened to her then, instead of going, oh, don't be silly, love, it's fine, you know.
She's very intuitive, your wife, isn't she?
Yeah, I could have avoided some pain. But it wouldn't have been a case of listening to her. It would have been a case of listening to her, bearing it in mind, and then watching how he behaved over the next few months. And then I would have actually gone, oh, actually, no, this guy's bad for me. I don't want him in my life. And I could have nicely engineered him out. So busy being busy and so busy running a business and being, going from meeting to meeting and being successful and, you know, holding the mobile phone to the ear and telling them buy, sell, and all that. You know, you don't, and slowing down is another massive piece of the puzzle. Just slow down, because there isn't a rush. And as a friend of mine always says, if you need an answer now, it's no.
That's a good one.
Because
talking of, you mentioned, I don't want to go too further past this, but you mentioned a minute ago about painting fences and meeting a mentor. You acquired a mentor, what, halfway through your business life, or did you have one from the early days?
We met a couple of people along the way who were helpful to us for a little while. Nice people. Part of the problem that we've had with mentors, and we've never had a problem with a mentor, but part of the problem we've had with mentors is that they need to sit us down and slap us around the face and go, listen, you couple of idiots. And this is because we weren't listening, because they were being too nice. They were saying, well, if they're not going to get the point, we weren't in the business of working out what they were trying to say. We needed someone to spell it out to us.
Yeah.
And sit us down and, you know, swear at us and say, listen to what I'm saying, you idiot, you know, and other words like that, idiot.
Do you do that with your son's friends? Do you give it to them straight, or do you hold back a bit, knowing that they have to make their own mistakes to some degree?
The trouble is that there's only so much information that anyone, including me, can take on at one time.
Yeah.
There's only so much input you can take. So I tend to sort of, if people that want to talk to me about stuff, I tend to break it down into bite-sized pieces. And then, so for example, the first thing if somebody was talking to me, someone came to see me and said,
let's do that. Let's role play. I'm a new I'm a new business owner, or someone who's in business but not doing as well as I'd like, and I want your help. What would you do?
Well, the first thing I'd do is ask you a load of questions to establish what it is you know about the fundamentals of business.
Yeah.
So I'd ask you about what your turnover is, what your gross profit is, what your overhead is, how you break that overhead down between fixed and variable, and, you know, let's see your cash flow. And then we'd see what you could answer. Because if you said, well, I don't know what my turnover is, and you don't know what your gross profit is, and you haven't got a cash flow, then we need to fix those things first. Because it's like setting off across the Atlantic in a boat with a hole in the bottom of the boat, no compass, and no food. It's not going to happen, is it?
No. But even experienced business people, I mean, when I first met you, you were the person who taught me how to run a cash flow properly, because
it's amazing.
I'd already asked my bank manager and my accountant how businesses run their money, and neither of them could tell me, because obviously they were employees. But you know, it wasn't until you gave me a really practical solution for running my money on a week by week basis and I've shared that with so many people, and it changes people's lives completely.
Oh, a cash flow is I'm not being funny, but a cash flow is on a basic level an absolute fundamental, and you can run a business without one, because I ran businesses for years without a cash flow. And that was mainly because there weren't such things as spreadsheets at that time,
right?
Or PCs. But, you know, I was flying by the seat of my pants for years. Not only is it a fundamental, but it is such an intuitive tool, and it tells you so much about the business. Just a simple cash flow will tell, you know, I can show you how, I don't mean you, but you as in a person sitting in front of me who runs a cash flow. So someone comes to see me, I ask them the fundamental questions. If they haven't got the fundamental answers, then we've got to build that first. So then it's a case of, right, okay, this is what you need to do. This is how it works. You go away and do that. Come back and see me next week with all that stuff. And then we'll build from there. And then what I need to, once they understand the fundamentals of these different things, do we then start talking about, okay, so what are you doing wrong? What are all these costs? What are all these expenses? Do you need those things? How does that work? Why have you got that? You know, and then we look at all the things you're doing right. And then we look at how we can make the things you're doing right better. So there's all these stupidly obvious things that most people don't notice. So somebody said to me once, he said, let me ask you this. If you had a business turning over £5,000 a week that was making £500 a week profit, net profit after everything, how would you double your profit? And I said, well, I'd get my turnover up to 10 grand a week. Makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
No, you don't. You put your prices up by 10%.
10%? Is that all it takes to double your turnover?
Well, because your turnover is £5,500 a week, but everything else remains the same, doesn't it? You're in the same premises with the same staff and the same products and the same. All your costs stay the same. So instead of making £500 a week out of £5 grand turnover, you make £1,000 a week out of £5.5 grand turnover. So it's not a case of you just do that, but it's understanding the fundamental of growing your business doesn't necessarily mean you have to grow your business. You don't have to grow your business with more people, more premises, more equipment, more plant, more machinery, more. There's other ways. And that's one of the things that if you look around at companies, and I'm using Amazon as an example, because everybody's heard of Amazon. Amazon make a fortune because they've refined it down. You know, they make everything. They make they make savings everywhere that could possibly be made. And they make profits everywhere that could possibly be made. And they're constantly working on that. So working on your business is a completely different thing to working in your business. Yeah. Running your business day to day is a completely different thing to working on your business. And that was one of the things that the mentor we had, who's still friends with us now, taught us, is that you need to take time out of running the business and you need to sit down and you need to throw ideas around, preferably with somebody else who isn't anything to do with the business.
Yeah.
So the guys I saw recently, two young lads, 25 and 22, something like that. Lovely boys. I've known them since they were, born basically.
Little.
And I was chucking some ideas at them about their products. And I said, well, how else? I said, have you thought about this idea for marketing? And they went, no, I didn't think of that. I said, and it was just, and I was coming up with these ideas because I'm not in the business.
Yeah.
Because I'm not thinking like they're thinking. I'm outside of their world. And one of the things I came up with was, so I don't want to tell you what business they're in because it's not
of course. Yeah.
fair on them. But I said to them, what about making things more affordable? And they said, we don't want to put our prices down. I said, no. I said, making it more affordable. So I explained to them the difference between price and cost. So the price of something is 40 grand. But if it only costs you £199 a month, that's the cost, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's why people buy expensive cars, because they don't buy the car, they buy the cost. And that's how the car manufacturers are now able to sell people on these PCP things, where they bring, because of the way they structure it, which is basically a lease, they get the monthly payment right down to entice you to buy the new car. Whereas if you go back 40, 50 years, you couldn't do that. You had to get a loan and pay it off in 3 years. So people couldn't afford those cars because you had to clear it in 3 years. So they've found ways to get you to buy things you can't afford. And what I said to these guys was, I said, well, make it more affordable. And they said, well, I don't understand. I said, well, you've heard of Klarna, haven't you? And they went, yeah. And I went, there you go then. They went, oh, God, of course. So you can buy your product, spread it over 6 months or whatever it is. I don't know how it works. Is it Klarna?
Yeah, I know. I don't. Yeah. I've heard of it. Yeah.
One of these short-term financing things,
And Amazon do it as well. They offer you to pay in instalments, and they're providing the finance essentially. They're the broker between the. And the other thing that Amazon do that just popped into my head is they watch and see what's selling like bucket loads from the Amazon sellers who've brought, either sourced the product in China or somewhere like that and then brought it to Amazon. And then they start making their Amazon Basics range or their Amazon Essentials range. So they start, they've got, oh my God, it's so genius, the business model.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
Well,
I find it
people don't like it, but it is genius.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to actually go to work, but it's interesting to watch and discuss.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's all these different, talking to somebody who isn't in the business you're in.
Yeah.
Can sometimes be very frustrating because they may not understand the business you're in. But by having to explain to somebody that's not in your business how your business works, you learn more about your business.
Yeah.
Because you suddenly realize things about your business that you didn't realize before you started explaining it to someone.
Yeah. And also you uncover your own assumptions, limiting beliefs, negative beliefs. And the other thing, if you can get someone who's good at what's going on in the outside world as well. Look, as I said earlier, looking back to what was coming in 2007, 2008, 2009, I would have behaved so differently to how I behaved. I had the best year ever in my business in 2009. And then January 2010, we had to close the business. And I would have behaved so differently in the 3, 4, 5 years previously if I'd known what's coming on the big financial world stage. Unbelievable.
Absolutely. And one of the lessons is to not have everything on the line with the business. So there's people who, they're living in a nice house, they're running a business, everything's good. And then the business gets into trouble. So what they do is they refinance the house.
Stay tuned for part 3 of this engrossing interview with Greg Porter. He's only just getting warmed up, let me tell you that. You've been listening to Nicola Cairncross of nicolacairnext.com. Well, I hope you enjoyed the show today. We've got lots of resources on the website, so do come over to check them out. And by all means, feel free to book yourself into my diary at nicolacairnext.com/diary. I love to talk to entrepreneurs.